The fluorescent lights above Bay 3 cast harsh shadows across the blood-smeared floor. A man's chest wasn't moving. The monitor screamed its flat monotone into the chaos, then lurched back into rhythm, erratic and violent. Across the room, a small figure in scrubs stood perfectly still, eyes tracking something no one else saw. Emma Reeves, 29, soft-spoken, the kind of nurse who flinched when doctors raised their voices. "Wait, she's assigned to trauma tonight?" "Doctor," Marcus Holt muttered to a resident loud enough to be heard. "Seriously?" But Emma didn't turn, didn't defend herself, just kept watching the monitors with an intensity that didn't match her trembling hands. What they didn't know, what nobody at Silver Pine General Hospital in Crescent Falls, Oregon knew, was that those same hands had once stopped arterial bleeding in a sandstorm while rounds pinged off metal 2 feet away. "Before we go any further, I need you to do something. Stay with me until the end of this story. If it grabs you, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's get back to the night everything changed. The ambulance bay doors slammed open and the night exploded into motion. Multi-vehicle pileup on Route 44, 8 incoming, 2 critical." The charge nurse's voice cut through the ER like a blade. Emma stepped back against the wall as the first gurney blasted past her, attendings and residents swarming it like sharks. She'd learned early to stay out of the way. 6 months at Silver Pine General had taught her that much. Keep quiet. Do your job. Don't make waves. "Reeves!" Dr. Holt barked without looking at her. "Vitals on bed 7, then restock the crash cart. Move." She nodded, already walking. Bed 7 held a teenager with a broken arm and his mother hovering nearby, face tight with worry. Emma checked his pulse, noted his oxygen sat, adjusted his IV drip. Her movements were small, efficient, invisible. "You're doing great, Tyler," she said softly. The kid barely heard her. Across the room, controlled chaos unfolded. Dr. Holt commanded the space with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Tall, mid-40s, the kind of attending who wore his authority like cologne. Residents orbited him, eager to impress. "Chest trauma, probable pneumo," he announced, leaning over a gurney. "Johnson, what's your call?" The resident stammered through a diagnosis. Holt corrected him, not unkindly, but loud enough that everyone heard. Teaching moment. Power move. Emma had seen it 100 times. The second wave hit 10 minutes later. "Another one rolling in hot. Male. Mid-30s, ejected from vehicle, GCS fluctuating." The gurney crashed through the doors. Paramedics were still doing compressions. The man's face was pale, lips going blue. Emma glanced up from restocking supplies and something cold flickered behind her eyes. She watched the transfer, watched them lift him onto the bed, watched Dr. Holt take command, hands moving fast, calling out orders. The man's name was Daniel Cross, according to the paramedic report. Construction worker, no priors, wrong place, wrong time. "Breath sounds?" Holt demanded. "Diminished on the right," a resident replied. "Probably fractured ribs. Let's get x-ray, start him on pain management, and don't move him." Emma's voice cut in, quiet but clear. The room didn't quite stop, but it slowed. Heads turned. Holt looked at her like he'd just noticed a stain on his shoe. "Excuse me?" Emma stood at the edge of the trauma bay, hands clenched at her sides. "His breathing pattern's wrong. Paradoxical chest movement. If you move him before checking—" "I'm aware of what paradoxical breathing looks like, Nurse Reeves," Holt said, voice dripping condescension. "He's got bruised ribs and he's in shock. We stabilize, we image, we treat. Standard protocol." "It's not bruised ribs." Silence now. Full stop. Holt straightened, eyes narrowing. "You want to repeat that?" Emma's jaw tightened. She could feel every gaze in the room on her, the residents, the techs, the other nurses. This was the moment she was supposed to back down. Apologize. Defer to the doctor with 15 years of experience. Instead, she stepped closer. "He's got a flail chest. Maybe worse. You move him wrong, a bone fragment could puncture his lung. He'll code." Holt's face darkened. "You're a nurse, not a diagnostician. Stay in your lane. I'm telling you what I see. And I'm telling you to step back and let me do my job." Emma opened her mouth. The monitor flatlined. For one brutal second, nobody moved. Then the room detonated into motion. Compression started. Someone called for the crash cart. Holt was shouting orders, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. Panic bled through. Emma didn't wait for permission. She grabbed a 14-gauge needle from the supply tray and moved to the patient's side, shouldering past a resident. "Reeves, what the hell are you—" She didn't answer. Her hands, those same shaky, uncertain hands, moved with sudden, absolute precision. Found the intercostal space. Angled the needle. Pushed. A hiss of air released. Pressure equalized. The monitor beeped. Once. Twice. Rhythm returning. Daniel Cross gasped, chest rising. The room went still again, but this time the silence was different. Stunned. Confused. Emma withdrew the needle, set it aside, stepped back. Her hands were steady now, completely steady. Holt stared at her. His face had gone from red to white. "You just performed a needle decompression without my authorization. He was dying. You overstepped. You directly contradicted a physician's assessment. He bit off the words, visibly trying to regain control. "You're done. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Emma didn't argue. Didn't beg. She just looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her eyes. Then she nodded. "Okay." She turned and walked toward the locker room, the sounds of the ER fading behind her. Behind her, the staff exchanged glances. Some looked uncertain, others relieved. A few nurses whispered among themselves, but nobody spoke up. Nobody defended her. Dr. Holt turned back to Daniel Cross, whose vitals were stabilizing. "Get him to imaging, full chest series, and someone page respiratory." The residents moved quickly, eager to move past the awkwardness. Within minutes, the trauma bay had returned to its normal rhythm. Orders called out, charts updated. Another patient wheeled in. Emma Reeves was already forgotten, except by one person. Sarah Vance, a senior nurse with 20 years at Silverpine, watched Emma disappear through the staff corridor. She'd worked with Emma on night shifts for the past 4 months. Quiet girl? Kept to herself. But Sarah had noticed things. The way Emma's eyes tracked injuries before doctors called them. The way she positioned herself near critical patients, like she was anticipating crashes before the monitors showed them. Sarah had asked her once, during a slow Tuesday graveyard shift where she'd trained. Around, Emma had said. Not defensive, just done with the question. Sarah hadn't pushed. Everyone had a past they didn't want to talk about. But now, watching the locker room door swing shut, Sarah wondered what exactly Emma Reeves was running from. The locker room was empty. Emma sat on the bench, unlacing her shoes with slow, deliberate movements. Her scrubs still had Daniel Cross's blood on them. She stared at the stains like they were a language she'd forgotten how to read. Her locker door hung open. Inside, a spare pair of shoes, a jacket, a small leather wallet. Nothing personal. No photos. No mementos. She'd known this job wouldn't last. They never did. Billings, Montana. 9 months. Fired for questioning and attending sepsis protocol. The patient lived. She got escorted out. Flagstaff, Arizona. 7 months. Reported a surgeon for operating impaired. He had connections. She didn't. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. 4 months. Intervened in a code when the resident froze. Saved the patient. Got written up for overstepping. And now Crescent Falls, 6 months, a new record. She pulled out her phone. No messages, no missed calls, just the lock screen, a blank photo of a horizon, somewhere flat and far away. Emma almost smiled at that. Almost. She tied her sneakers, pulled on her jacket, and slung her bag over one shoulder. The hospital ID badge sat on the bench. She didn't take it. The back exit led to the parking lot. She pushed through the door, cold night air hitting her face. Crescent Falls was quiet this time of night. Small city, mountains in the distance, the kind of place people move to for peace. She'd been here 6 months, long enough to learn the streets, not long enough to make friends. Her car was parked under a broken streetlight. Old Honda, dented bumper. It started on the second try, engine coughing to life. She sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, staring at the hospital's lit windows. Part of her wanted to drive, just put the city in the rear view and find somewhere new. Somewhere they didn't know her face or her name. She'd done it before. She could do it again. But another part, the part she'd been trying to bury for 2 years, was tired. tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being small. Emma closed her eyes, exhaled slowly. Then the sky started to shake. It wasn't thunder. Wasn't a truck. It was a sound Emma recognized in her bones. Low, rhythmic, heavy. The thrum of rotor blades cutting air. She looked up. Two black helicopters descended from the dark, running lights off, moving with military precision. Blackhawks. They came in fast and low, flaring over the hospital's main lot. The downwash kicked up trash and loose gravel, scattering it across the pavement. Emma's hands tightened on the wheel. The first helicopter touched down. The second hovered, providing overwatch. Doors opened before the skids fully settled. Figures emerged, operators in tactical gear, weapons slung low and ready. Not police, not SWAT. Military. She watched them move toward the ER entrance in a tight formation, smooth and practiced. Saw the hospital security guards step back, hands up, completely outmatched. Emma killed the engine, sat perfectly still. This wasn't for her. Couldn't be. She'd been off the grid for 2 years, new name, new life. She'd buried that part of herself so deep it might as well be dead. But the helicopters were still there, and the operators weren't leaving. Her phone buzzed. She looked down. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then instinct, old buried instinct, made her swipe to accept. Reeves. A man's voice. Clipped. Familiar. Emma's breath caught. Bishop. We need you back. No. It's not a request, Commander. She closed her eyes. Commander. The word hit like a punch. She hadn't heard it in 2 years, hadn't wanted to. I'm out, she said quietly. You know I'm out. There's a situation. Category 1. High-value asset down in a contested zone. Medic embedded with the team is KIA. Replacement won't arrive in time. We need someone who can work under fire. Someone we trust. Find someone else. There is no one else. Not for this. Bishop's voice softened, just barely. We wouldn't pull you unless it was critical. You know that. Emma stared at the hospital. Through the windows, she could see the ER still buzzing with activity. Daniel Cross was probably stable by now. They'd run the scans, confirm her diagnosis, maybe even wonder how a nurse made that call so fast. They'd never know the truth. How long? She asked. 72 hours. In and out. Then you're done. For real this time. She didn't believe that, but she also knew Bishop wouldn't call unless people were dying. The team's waiting, Bishop said. You coming or not? Emma sat in the silence of her car, the rotors still thumping in the distance. Thought about Daniel Cross. Thought about Dr. Holt's face when he fired her. Thought about the last 2 years of hiding, of playing small, of pretending she was someone she wasn't. I'll need my gear, she said finally. Already on the bird. Of course it was. She ended the call, opened the car door, and stepped out into the cold. The operators saw her immediately. One of them broke formation, jogging toward her. Young guy, tactical vest, face she didn't recognize. Commander Hayes? He asked. She almost corrected him, almost said the name was Reeves now, but what was the point? Yeah, she said. This way, ma'am. He led her toward the helicopter. The other operators watched her approach, and she saw the moment they recognized her. Posture straightened, eyes sharpened. She wasn't just another passenger. The team leader stepped forward, older than the others, scarred jaw, eyes like flint. Callahan, he said, extending a hand. Emma shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. You run the team? For now. We lost Martinez 2 hours ago. Bled out before we could get him stabilized. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just keep the rest of my boys breathing. Inside the ER, Dr. Holt was washing his hands when someone called his name. Dr. Holt? There's military here. They're asking for someone. He frowned, drying his hands. Military? What are they? They're asking for Emma Reeves. The towel stopped moving. What? They said call sign Valkyrie. Holt stared. Then he turned and walked fast toward the entrance, white coat flapping behind him. The ER lobby had cleared. Civilians pushed back. Security standing at a distance. And in the center, 4 operators in full tactical gear, weapons ready, faces hard. Their leader stepped forward when he saw Holt. "Where is she?" "Who?" Holt stammered. "Emma Reeves, nurse, brown hair, 5'6", works trauma. She doesn't work here anymore. I fired her 20 minutes ago." The operator's expression didn't change. "Where did she go?" Probably the parking lot, but..." The man turned, spoke into his radio. Seconds later, a response crackled back. He listened, nodded. "She's en route," he said to his team. Then he looked back at Holt. "You fired Commander Hayes?" Holt blinked. "Commander?" "Emma Hayes, former Special Operations Combat Medic, Tier 1 asset. Classified clearance, 3 tours, 17 confirmed saves under fire." The operator's voice was flat, factual, no emotion, which somehow made it worse. "The woman you just fired saved more lives in one deployment than you'll see in your entire career." The room went silent. Holt's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Behind him, residents and nurses had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Sarah Vance stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, face unreadable. One of the residents, Johnson, the one who'd been on Daniel Cross, spoke up. That's not possible. She's just a nurse. She barely talks." She's Valkyrie," the operator said simply. "Look it up if you've got clearance." He turned and walked out, his team falling in behind him. The doors swung shut. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then someone pulled out their phone. Outside, Emma climbed into the helicopter. The interior was cold, all metal and straps, and the smell of gun oil. Her gear was waiting: medical pack, plate carrier, helmet. She ran her hands over it, muscle memory taking over. One of the operators leaned in. "Good to have you back, ma'am." She didn't answer, just buckled in and stared out at the hospital as the rotors spun up. Through the windows, she saw people gathering, saw Dr. Holt standing in the entrance, face pale, staring up at the helicopter. She wondered if he understood yet. Probably not. The Blackhawk lifted, smooth and fast, banking hard over Crescent Falls. The city lights spread out below, small and distant. Emma watched them fade, her reflection ghosting in the window. 2 years. She'd lasted 2 years. The operator across from her held out a tablet. "Mission brief. Target zone is 18 hours out. We'll refuel twice." Emma took it, started reading. The words blurred at first, then snapped into focus. High-value target. Hostile territory. Embedded team compromised. Casualty rate climbing. She scrolled down, saw photos, intelligence reports, maps with red zones marked, and then a name, Captain James Rucker. Her hands stopped moving. No, not him. The operator noticed. "You know him?" Emma didn't answer, just kept staring at the screen, at the photo of a man she hadn't seen in 3 years. A man she'd saved once before, in a firefight that still woke her up at night. Kandahar Province. 2021. A supposed safe house that turned into an ambush. 12 hostiles, 3 operators down. Rucker took shrapnel to the femoral. Emma had worked on him in a blown-out room while bullets chewed through the walls. She'd kept him alive for 40 minutes until evac arrived. He'd looked at her afterward, pale and shaking, and said, "I owe you one." She'd told him not to get shot again. Apparently he hadn't listened. "Commander?" the operator pressed. She looked up, face unreadable. "Yeah, I know him. He's got maybe 12 hours. Trauma to the abdomen. Field medic did what he could, but they're pinned down. Can't get air support in without risking civilian casualties. What's the play? Insertion at dawn, ground infill. Extract the team and get them to the rally point, fast and quiet." Emma nodded slowly, fast and quiet. The kind of operation that went wrong in 100 different ways. "Who else is on the team?" she asked. Callahan spoke up from across the cabin. 6 operators including me, weapons specialist, comms, 2 riflemen, and an EOD tech, plus you. 7 total. 7 against an estimated 30 to 40 hostiles in an urban environment with limited air support and 0 margin for error. Callahan's expression didn't change. "Standard Tuesday." One of the younger operators laughed nervously. Emma didn't. She went back to the tablet, memorizing the maps, street layouts, entry points, evac routes. She'd done this before, Hundreds of times, but it never got easier. "How bad is Rucker?" she asked quietly. "Bad," Callahan said. "He's conscious but fading. Lost a lot of blood. If we don't get to him soon, it won't matter how good you are." Emma set the tablet down, looked out at the darkness rushing past. Somewhere in that darkness, a man she'd saved once before was dying, and she was the only one who could reach him in time. The helicopter cut through the night, rotors hammering against the silence. Emma closed her eyes, steadied her breathing. She could feel the old instincts waking up, the part of her that had learned to function under fire, the part that didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, the part she'd tried so hard to bury. It was back now, and it wasn't going away. Back at Silver Pine General, Dr. Marcus Holt sat in his office, door closed, phone in his hand. He'd searched the name. Valkyrie. What came back was redacted, classified. But there were whispers. Forum posts from veterans, rumors on military threads, a combat medic who'd operated in places the government didn't officially acknowledge, someone who'd pulled off saves that shouldn't have been possible. 17 confirmed. That's what the operator had said. Holt thought about the way Emma had moved. The precision, the certainty. He thought about firing her. His phone buzzed. A text from the hospital administrator. "My office. First thing tomorrow. We need to talk." Holt closed his eyes. Across the ER, Sarah Vance stood in the break room, staring at her own phone. She'd found a photo. Grainy. Old. A group of soldiers in desert fatigues, faces hard, eyes tired. And there, in the back row, smaller than the others but standing just as straight, Emma. Younger. Harder. But definitely her. Sarah set the phone down, exhaled slowly. "Who the hell were you?" she whispered to the empty room. The helicopter flew on. Inside, Emma Hayes, formerly Emma Reeves, formerly Commander Hayes, formerly Valkyrie, sat in silence, eyes closed, breathing steady. In 12 hours, she'd be in a war zone. In 12 hours, she'd be back where she belonged. And everyone who'd ever doubted her, everyone who'd ever dismissed her, ignored her, fired her, would finally understand. She wasn't the quiet nurse who flinched at raised voices. She was the woman who walked into hell and carried people out. The rotors pounded. The night swallowed them whole. And somewhere ahead, in a city torn apart by violence, Captain James Rucker held on. Waiting. Because he knew. If anyone could reach him, it was her. The mission clock started counting down. 11 hours, 43 minutes. Dawn was coming, and with it, the reckoning. The helicopter landed on a military airstrip 2 hours before dawn. No signs, no lights. Just flat tarmac stretching into darkness and the skeletal outline of a hangar against the stars. Emma stepped out into the rotor wash, boots hitting concrete. Her legs remembered this. The weight of gear, the cold pre-mission air. The way time stretched thin right before everything went loud. Callahan was already moving toward the hangar, his team falling in behind him. Emma followed, medical pack heavy on her back. Inside, the space was lit by harsh work lights strung across metal rafters. Maps covered a folding table. Satellite images. Grid coordinates. Red circles marking hostile positions. A man stood at the table, mid-50s, graying hair, eyes that had seen too much. He looked up when they entered. "Hayes," he said. "Colonel Brennan." Emma's voice was steady. She hadn't seen him since her discharge papers came through. He'd signed them personally, told her she was making a mistake leaving. Maybe he'd been right. "Didn't think I'd see you again," Brennan said. "Neither did I." He gestured to the table. "Situation's deteriorated since we pulled you. Rucker's team was conducting reconnaissance in Zarabad, small city, northern corridor. Intel suggested minimal hostile presence. They were wrong." Emma stepped closer, studying the maps. Zarabad. She'd heard of it. Border region, contested territory. The kind of place where lines on maps meant nothing. "Ambush?" she asked. "Coordinated assault. They hit the safe house at 0400 local time. Rucker's team took casualties immediately. Martinez tried to stabilize them, but took a round to the neck, bled out in minutes." Callahan spoke up. "How many hostiles?" "Initial count was 30. Now we're looking at 45, possibly 50. They fortified positions around the safe house. Rucker and 4 others are trapped inside. No way out except through a kill zone." "Air support?" one of the operators asked. Brennan shook his head. "Civilian buildings too close. One stray round hits the wrong target, and we've got an international incident. Rules of engagement are tight. Ground extraction only. Emma traced a finger along the map, following the streets. What's Rucker's status? Abdominal trauma. Shrapnel from an IED they triggered trying to break out. He's lost significant blood. Last comms check was 40 minutes ago. He's conscious but deteriorating. And the others? 2 wounded, 2 mobile. They've got ammunition for maybe another hour if the hostiles push hard. Emma looked up. So we've got less than an hour to reach them. 53 minutes, Brennan corrected. After that, they're overrun. The hangar went quiet except for the hum of generators outside. Callahan stepped forward. What's the insertion plan? Brennan pointed to the map. We drop you here, 3 clicks northwest of the safe house. You move on foot through this residential sector. Most civilians have evacuated, but assume you'll encounter non-combatants. Your objective is to reach the safe house, stabilize Rucker and the wounded, and extract to this rally point. He tapped a spot marked with a green circle. Exfil Bird will be waiting. Window is tight. 15 minutes on the ground, Max. 15 minutes to cross a hostile city, extract 5 personnel, and reach a rally point under fire, Callahan said flatly. That's optimistic. That's the mission. Emma studied the route. Narrow streets, multi-story buildings, 100 places for ambush. She'd worked in worse conditions, but never with a 53-minute deadline hanging over a dying man. Equipment? She asked. Brennan nodded to a row of crates against the wall. Standard loadout. Plates, helmets, NVGs, ammunition. Medical is already packed per your old kit specs. Emma walked to the crates, opened one. Inside, her trauma kit lay exactly as she'd left it 2 years ago. Tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, chest seals, IVs, every item in its place, arranged by priority. Someone had maintained it. She looked back at Brennan. Bishop thought you might come back, he said quietly. Emma didn't respond, just started pulling on her gear. Plate carrier first, heavy across her shoulders. Magazine pouches. Helmet. The weight settled onto her like an old coat. Familiar. Wrong. Right. Around her, Callahan's team prepped in silence. These were professionals. No bravado. No wasted motion. They checked weapons, tested comms, ran through contingencies with the efficiency of people who'd done this too many times to count. The youngest operator, the one who'd met her at the hospital, fumbled with his radio. Callahan noticed. Hayes, he said, gesturing her over. She walked to the kid. He couldn't have been more than 22. Fresh face, eyes too wide. First time in theater, she asked. No, ma'am. 3rd deployment. Just... He swallowed. First time with Valkyrie. Emma almost laughed. Almost. I'm just a medic, same as Martinez was. Martinez didn't have 17 confirmed saves. Martinez didn't get to 18. The kid flinched. Emma regretted it immediately, but she didn't take it back. He needed to understand. This wasn't glory. It was bleeding out in dirt while your friends tried to keep your insides from becoming outsides. Callahan stepped in. Ross, check your mag count. Hayes, walk with me. They moved away from the others. Callahan kept his voice low. Ross is solid. Green, but solid. Don't rattle him before we jump. He's already rattled. So are you. Emma stopped walking, looked at him. Callahan's expression was unreadable. 2 years out, desk jobs and quiet shifts, now you're dropping into a hot zone with 50 hostiles and a man bleeding out. You good? I'm here, aren't I? That's not what I asked. Emma held his gaze. For a moment she considered lying, telling him she was fine, that the old instincts were still sharp, that she could do this in her sleep. Instead, she said, I don't know. Callahan nodded slowly. Fair enough. Just don't freeze when it counts. I won't. Martinez froze for 3 seconds. That's all it took. Emma felt that land, felt the weight of it settle next to everything else she was carrying. I won't freeze, she said again. Callahan studied her for another moment, then nodded. Good, because Rucker's counting on you, and so am I. He walked back to the team. Emma stood alone for a moment, breathing. Her hands were shaking again. Not much. Just enough to notice. She clenched them into fists, forced them steady. Across the hangar, Brennan was speaking into a satellite phone. He listened, replied, ended the call, walked over to the team. Birds are spooling up. You launch in 10. The operators moved toward the hangar doors. Emma followed, medical pack heavy on her back, helmet tucked under one arm. Outside, 2 Blackhawks sat on the tarmac, rotors already turning. The pre-dawn air smelled like jet fuel and dust. Brennan caught her arm as she passed. Hayes. She stopped. Bring them home, he said. That's the plan. All of them. Including yourself. Emma didn't answer, just pulled her arm free and walked toward the helicopter. The flight was rough. Turbulence kicked them around over the mountains, the helicopter bucking and dropping. Nobody talked. Ross looked green. One of the riflemen had his eyes closed, lips moving in what might have been prayer. Emma stared out the window at the darkness below, watching for the first signs of dawn. Callahan's voice crackled over the comms. 5 minutes to drop. The team checked weapons one last time, charged bolts, tested lights. Emma ran through her medical supplies, counting items she'd counted 100 times already. Muscle memory. Ritual. The things you did to keep your hands busy and your mind from asking questions you couldn't answer. 3 minutes. The helicopter dropped lower, hugging the terrain. Emma could see buildings now, emerging from the darkness. Zarabad. Smaller than she'd expected. Maybe 20,000 people before the fighting started. Probably half that now. 1 minute. Stand by. The Blackhawk flared hard, nose up, rotors screaming. Emma felt her stomach drop. Then they were down, skids hitting dirt, side door open. Go! 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 She was moving before her brain caught up, boots hitting ground, medical pack bouncing against her back. The helicopter lifted immediately, rotor wash blasting dust and debris. And then it was gone, engines fading into the distance. Silence rushed in. Callahan raised a fist. The team froze. Emma dropped to one knee, scanning their surroundings. They'd landed in an empty lot between 2 abandoned buildings. No movement, no lights. Just the smell of smoke and something else. Something rotten. Clear, someone whispered. Move, Callahan ordered. They advanced in 2-man teams, weapons up, scanning corners. Emma stayed in the middle of the formation where the medic was supposed to be. Protected. Available. Target. They reached the first street, narrow. Buildings on both sides. Windows dark, doors hanging open. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, then stopped abruptly. Callahan checked his GPS, gestured left. They moved. Emma's heart was hammering now. Every shadow looked hostile. Every sound made her flinch. This was the part she'd forgotten. The part civilian life had scrubbed clean. The constant edge of panic awareness that any moment could detonate into violence. They covered 2 blocks in silence. Then Ross raised his fist, pointing. Movement. 2nd floor window. The team scattered, finding cover. Emma pressed herself against a wall, medical pack digging into her spine. She watched the window, saw a shape. Small, child-sized. Civilian, she whispered into comms. Callahan's voice came back. Hold fire. Keep moving. But Emma was already looking at the figure, seeing details the others couldn't. The way it stood. Too still. Too deliberate. She'd seen this before. Spotters. Kids used to mark positions for ambush teams. Wait, she said. Callahan glanced back. What? Something's wrong. What are you? The window shattered. Muzzle flash lit up the darkness. Rounds chewed into the street where they'd been standing 3 seconds earlier. Contact! Someone yelled. The world exploded into noise. Return fire lit up the buildings. Emma dropped flat, covering her head as masonry exploded above her. She could hear Callahan shouting orders, could hear Ross screaming something, could hear the high crack of rounds passing overhead. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to remember. This wasn't her first firefight. She rolled right, came up behind a concrete barrier, scanned for injuries. The team was scattered but moving, no one down yet. Suppressing fire, Callahan barked. Hayes, Ross, move left, now! Emma grabbed Ross by his vest and pulled. He stumbled after her, eyes wide with shock. They reached a doorway, ducked inside. The building stank of mold and abandonment. You good? She asked. Ross nodded, breathing hard. Yeah, I'm good. Check your sectors. He moved to a window, weapon up. Emma risked a glance outside. The hostile fire was coming from two positions now. Multiple shooters. Coordinated. Callahan's voice crackled over comms. We've got 2 KIA on the rooftop, northeast corner. Martinez, circle around. He caught himself. Silence. Then quieter. Hayes, can you reach them? Emma looked at the rooftop. 30 meters across open ground under active fire. Negative, she said. Not without support. Stand by. One of the operators launched a grenade. The explosion lit up the night, silhouetting the buildings. Return fire slackened. Move, Callahan ordered. Emma and Ross sprinted across the street, boots pounding dirt. A round whipped past her head, close enough to feel the displacement. She didn't slow down. Reached cover, slid behind a low wall. The team regrouped. 2 minutes of contact. Nobody injured. Impossible luck. That was a probe, Callahan said, breathing hard. They're testing us. They know we're here, Emma said. Then we move fast before they organize. They pushed deeper into the city. The streets grew narrower, debris everywhere, burned out cars, collapsed walls, signs of fighting from previous battles. Emma stepped over shell casings and tried not to look at the dark stains on the pavement. 4 blocks from the safe house, they heard it. Automatic weapons fire. Sustained. Close. That's Rucker, Callahan said. They picked up the pace, moving from cover to cover. The gunfire grew louder. Emma could hear voices now, shouting in a language she didn't speak. The hostiles were close. They rounded a corner and saw the safe house. 3-story building, reinforced door blown off its hinges, windows barricaded with furniture, muzzle flashes coming from the second floor, and surrounding it, spread across the street and occupying nearby buildings, dozens of armed fighters. 50 hostiles my ass, someone muttered. That's closer to 70. Callahan pulled them back behind cover. We can't fight through that. We don't have to, Emma said. We just need a window. A window for what? To get inside, stabilize Rucker. Then we hold until exfil. Hold against 70 fighters? For how long? Emma checked her watch. 37 minutes until the extraction window closed. Long enough, she said. Callahan looked at her, then at his team, then back at the safe house. You're insane. You got a better idea? He didn't. Ross, Morrison, set up a support position here. Lay down fire on my mark. Everyone else, with me. We push for the side entrance. Callahan looked at Emma. You stay with me. When we breach, you go straight to Rucker. Don't stop for anything. Got it. I mean it. You're not a shooter. You're a medic. You patch him up and you keep him breathing. That's your only job. Emma nodded. Callahan keyed his radio. Rucker, if you're listening, we're coming in hot. Southwest entrance. 30 seconds. Static. Then a weak voice, barely audible. Copy. Hurry. Callahan looked at his team. Ready? They nodded. Mark. Ross and Morrison opened fire. Tracer rounds lit up the darkness, hammering into the hostile positions. Fighters scattered, returning fire wildly. Callahan's team moved. They sprinted across the street in 2 groups, weapons up, firing as they ran. Emma stayed low, following Callahan's back. A round hit the ground inches from her foot. Another sparked off a metal railing. They reached the building. Callahan kicked in the side door, went in hard. Emma followed, medical pack swinging. Inside was chaos, smoke, darkness, the smell of blood and cordite. Someone was screaming. Emma's training kicked in, drowning out the fear. Rucker, she shouted. Upstairs, a voice called back. She found the stairs, took them 2 at a time. Callahan was right behind her, covering their 6. They reached the 2nd floor. And there he was. Captain James Rucker lay against the far wall, one hand pressed to his abdomen, the other holding a pistol. His face was gray, his uniform soaked with blood. 2 other soldiers crouched nearby, weapons trained on the windows. Another sat in the corner, leg wrapped in makeshift bandages. Emma dropped her pack, moved to Rucker. Hey, he said weakly. Told you not to get shot again. You're terrible at following instructions, Emma replied, cutting away his uniform. The wound was bad. Shrapnel had torn through his lower abdomen, possibly nicking the bowel. He'd lost too much blood. His skin was cold and clammy, pulse thready.
How long? Rucker asked. Emma didn't answer, just started working. Hemostatic gauze packed into the wound. Pressure. An IV line in his arm, fluids running. Outside, the gunfire intensified. Callahan was shouting orders, coordinating with Ross and Morrison. Hostile fire hammered the building, chewing through the barricaded windows. Hayes, Rucker said, don't talk. Save your strength. Hayes, listen. She looked at him. His eyes were clear despite the pain.
If it comes down to it, you leave me. Get the others out. Shut up. I'm serious. I said shut up. Emma's hands didn't stop moving. Bandages, chest seal for the sucking wound she'd just noticed on his side. More gauze. I didn't fly halfway across the world to watch you bleed out, so shut up and let me work. Rucker almost smiled. Then his eyes rolled back. Rucker! Emma checked his pulse. Still there. Barely. I need blood.
Does anyone have oat neg? One of the soldiers tossed her a bag from a medical kit. She hooked it up, got it running. Rucker's color improved slightly. Not much, but enough. An explosion rocked the building. Dust rained from the ceiling. RPG, someone yelled. Callahan appeared at the top of the stairs. They're massing for an assault. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they rush us. Emma looked at her watch. 28 minutes until exfil. Can we hold? Against this many, no.
Then we break out. With Rucker in this condition, he won't survive the movement. Emma looked down at the man she'd spent the last 10 minutes stabilizing. He was unconscious now, breathing shallow. If they moved him, he'd probably bleed out before they reached the rally point. If they stayed, they'd all die when the hostiles overran their position. No good options. The story of her life. We move, she said finally. I'll keep him alive. You keep them off us. Well, Callahan stared at her. You sure? No, but we're out of time. He nodded grimly. All right, prepare to move in 2 minutes. Grab everything you can carry. We're not coming back. The team scrambled, gathering weapons and ammunition. Emma prepped Rucker for transport, securing his IV, reinforcing his bandages. One of the mobile soldiers helped lift him onto a makeshift litter. This is going to hurt, Emma told the unconscious Rucker. Sorry. Another explosion, closer this time. The building shook. Time's up, Callahan shouted. We go now or we don't go at all. They moved toward the stairs. Emma helped carry the litter, medical pack bouncing against her spine. Behind them, hostile fire intensified. She could hear voices getting closer, boots on stairs. They reached the ground floor. Callahan kicked open the rear exit and stopped. 15 fighters stood in the alley, weapons raised. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then everything went to hell. Callahan fired first. The lead hostile went down before his weapon came level. The alley exploded into violence. Emma dropped flat, covering Rucker's litter with her body as rounds tore through the air above her. She felt impacts against the doorframe, felt brick dust rain down on her helmet. Back inside, Callahan was shouting, but the door behind them slammed shut. One of the hostiles had circled around, cutting off their retreat. They were trapped in the doorway. 15 fighters ahead. Unknown numbers behind. Rucker bleeding out beneath her. Morrison lobbed a flashbang. The explosion was blinding even with her eyes closed. Emma's ears rang. She forced herself up, grabbed the litter handle. Move! She screamed. They ran into the chaos. The hostiles were scattered, disoriented, firing blind. Callahan and his team punched through the gap, shooting as they moved. Emma dragged the litter, her back screaming with the effort. Rucker's weight combined with her medical pack felt like dragging a car. A hostile stumbled into her path, hands over his eyes. She didn't think, just raised her sidearm and fired twice. Center mass. He went down. Her hands were shaking again. Not from fear now, from adrenaline. They cleared the alley, hit the main street. Hostile fire chased them, rounds sparking off pavement. One of the soldiers carrying Rucker's front end, a corporal named Webb, grunted and stumbled. Webb! Emma shouted. I'm good. Keep moving. But she saw the blood spreading across his shoulder, saw the way he was favoring his left side. They ducked into another building, abandoned shop, shattered windows, counter torn apart. Callahan slammed the door, shoved a shelf against it. Head count, he barked. Here, Morrison called. Here, from Ross. Webb sagged against the wall, breathing hard.
Emma dropped the litter, moved to him. Let me see. I said I'm good, and I said let me see.
She cut away his uniform. Through and through, upper shoulder, missed the bone but clipped muscle. He'd have limited mobility in that arm. Can you shoot? She asked, packing the wound. Yeah. Can you shoot straight? Webb grimaced. Good enough. Emma taped the bandage, injected morphine, not too much. Needed him functional. Behind them, something heavy hit the door. Once, twice. The shelf scraped across the floor. They're coming through, Callahan said. We need another exit. Emma looked around. Saw a back hallway. Pointed. They grabbed the litter, moved fast. The hallway led to a storage room. A small window high on the wall. Too small for most of them. Ross, Callahan ordered. Up and out. Clear the alley. Ross didn't argue. Morrison boosted him up. He squeezed through the window, dropped out of sight. 10 seconds of silence. Then his voice crackled over comms. Clear, no hostiles. They passed Rucker through first, Ross and Morrison catching the litter on the other side. Then Webb, struggling with one arm. Then Emma, her medical pack catching on the frame. She wriggled through, dropped hard onto concrete. The door behind them exploded inward. Callahan came through the window, firing backward. Landed wrong, rolled, came up limping. Go, go, go! They ran. Emma had lost track of where they were. The streets all looked the same now. Smoke and ruins and the constant hammer of gunfire. Her lungs burned. Her legs felt like lead. Rucker's eyes fluttered open. He looked up at her, unfocused. Hey, she said, breathless. Stay with me. Where are we? Almost there. Don't talk. His hand found hers, squeezed weakly, then his eyes closed again. Emma checked her watch. 18 minutes until exfil. They were 6 blocks from the rally point. Might as well be 60. Callahan pulled them into an alley, checked his GPS. We're off course. Hostiles pushed us east. How far to the rally point? Emma asked. Half a click, straight through their territory. So we go around. No time. We go straight or we miss the window. Morrison spoke up. They'll have the main routes covered. Then we make our own route. Callahan pointed to a building. Through there. Cut across the rooftops. Drop down 2 blocks west. With a litter? Webb asked. You got a better idea? Nobody did. They entered the building. Stairwell choked with debris. They climbed, hauling Rucker up step by agonizing step. Emma's shoulders screamed. Her hands were blistered under her gloves. She didn't care. 4th floor, 5th. The roof access was chained shut. Stand back, Morrison said. He placed a breaching charge, tiny and precise. The explosion was sharp, contained. The chain fell away. They emerged onto the rooftop. Dawn was breaking now, painting the sky orange and red. Below, Zarabad spread out in every direction. Emma could see the hostile positions, could see fighters moving through the streets, searching. There, Callahan pointed. 2 buildings over. We cross the gap, descend on the far side. Emma looked at the gap. 3 meters. Maybe 4. With a litter. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? They rigged ropes, anchored them to structural posts. Morrison went first, making the jump easy. Caught the rope on the far side. Ross followed. Then Webb, struggling with his injured shoulder but making it. Emma and Callahan lifted the litter. On 3, Callahan said. He's going to die if we drop him. Then don't drop him. They swung the litter back, once, twice. 3, they threw. The litter sailed across the gap. Morrison and Ross caught it, pulled it to safety. Rucker didn't even wake up. Emma jumped next, landed hard, rolled. Her ankle twisted but held. Callahan came last. Halfway across, gunfire erupted from below. Rounds punched through the rooftop around him. He landed, stumbled, grabbed Emma's arm. Spotted! Move now! They ran for the far edge, found the fire escape, started down. 2nd floor, the metal gave way. Emma felt it go, felt the sickening drop. She grabbed the railing, held on as the platform collapsed beneath her. Morrison caught her arm, hauled her up onto solid metal. I'm good, she gasped. Keep going. They dropped to ground level, emerged in another alley. Emma checked Rucker. His pulse was thready again. The movement had reopened something, blood seeping through the bandages. "I need to repack this," she said. "No time," Callahan replied. "He's bleeding, and he'll bleed more if we stop and get overrun. We're 3 blocks out. He can hold 3 blocks." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to scream that 3 blocks might as well be 3 miles if Rucker bled out before they got there. But Callahan was already moving, and the hostiles were closing in, and there was no time for anything except forward. They hit the street, saw the rally point ahead, an open plaza. The extraction helicopter already inbound, rotors a distant thunder. Between them and safety, 40 meters of open ground, and 20 hostiles setting up a blocking position. "Contact front," Morrison yelled. They dove for cover as fire erupted from the plaza. Emma pulled Rucker behind a burned-out car, checked his vitals, pulse barely there, respiration shallow. He was shutting down. "Callahan!" she shouted over the gunfire. "I'm losing him." "How long does he have?" "Minutes. Maybe less." Callahan looked at the plaza, at the hostiles, at his team. His face was stone. "Morrison, Ross, suppressing fire. Webb, you're with me. We're going to punch a hole." "What about Hayes?" Webb asked. "She stays with Rucker. We clear the plaza. She brings him through." Emma grabbed Callahan's vest. "You can't assault a fortified position with 4 operators." "Watch me." "You'll get killed." "Probably." He looked at her. "But Rucker won't. That's the job." Before she could respond, Morrison and Ross opened fire. Callahan and Webb broke cover, moving fast and low. They threw grenades, fired on the move, pushing into the hostile position with absolute aggression. It was insane. It was suicide. It was working. The hostiles scattered under the assault, confused by the audacity. Callahan's team cut through them like a knife, exploiting gaps, hitting weak points. Emma watched, heart in her throat, as Webb took her round to his plate carrier, stumbled, kept moving. "Hayes!" Callahan's voice over comms. "Plaza's clear! Move!" Emma didn't hesitate. Grabbed the litter, started dragging. Morrison and Ross laid down covering fire. She could see the helicopter now, flaring to land in the center of the plaza. Halfway there, Rucker stopped breathing. Emma dropped the litter, started CPR. Compressions. Hard and fast. 30 count. Check airway. Breathe again. "Come on," she muttered. "Come on, don't you dare." Rucker gasped, coughed, breathing again. Emma grabbed the litter, kept moving. Her muscles were on fire. Her vision tunneled. She could see the helicopter, could see Callahan waving her forward. A hostile appeared from her left, raised his weapon. Ross shot him from 20 meters out. The man dropped. Emma reached the helicopter. Hands grabbed the litter, hauled Rucker inside. She climbed in after him, collapsed on the deck. "Where's Callahan?" she gasped. Nobody answered. She looked back at the plaza, saw Morrison and Ross sprinting for the bird, saw Webb limping behind them, saw Callahan standing his ground, laying down fire to cover their retreat. "Callahan!" she screamed into comms. "Get on the bird!" 30 seconds, he called back. But the hostiles were rallying. Fire intensified. Callahan went to one knee, reloading. Morrison and Ross reached the helicopter. Webb was 10 meters out. 5 meters. He stumbled. Went down. Emma was moving before she thought. Jumped out of the helicopter, ran to Webb, grabbed his vest, hauled him up. Half carried, half dragged him to the bird. Hands pulled them both inside. "Callahan!" the pilot shouted. "We're out of time!" Callahan was running now, 20 meters from the helicopter. 50. An RPG streaked across the plaza. Emma watched it happen in slow motion. Watched the warhead impact the ground between Callahan and the bird. Watched the explosion lift him off his feet. Watched him hit the ground hard and not move. "No!" Emma screamed. Morrison was already out, sprinting toward Callahan's position. Return fire chased him. He reached Callahan, grabbed him, started dragging. The pilot's voice crackled. "We need to go, now!" 30 seconds, Morrison shouted. "We don't have 30 seconds. Emma looked at Rucker, looked at the helicopter preparing to lift, looked at Morrison struggling to move Callahan's dead weight under fire. She jumped out of the helicopter. "Hayes, what are you—" She didn't hear the rest. Ran to Morrison, grabbed Callahan's other arm. Together they hauled him toward the bird. Rounds kicked up dirt around their feet. Something tugged at Emma's sleeve. She didn't look. 10 meters. 5. They threw Callahan into the helicopter. Morrison dove in after. Emma turned to follow. Pain exploded in her side. She looked down, saw blood spreading across her uniform, felt her legs go weak. Strong hands grabbed her, pulled her into the helicopter. The bird lifted immediately, banking hard. The plaza fell away below them. Emma lay on the deck, breathing hard, pressed her hand to her side. It came away red. Morrison was leaning over her. "You're hit." "I noticed," she gasped. "How bad?" She felt the wound, explored it with her fingers despite the pain. "Through and through, missed the organs, I think." "You think?" "Won't know until we land." Morrison grabbed her medical pack, started pulling supplies. Emma tried to sit up. Her vision swam. "Stay down," Morrison ordered. "Rucker, Ross has him. You did your job. Now let me do mine." Emma let her head fall back, stared at the helicopter ceiling. Her side was on fire. She could feel blood pooling beneath her, could feel her pulse hammering. Shock would set in soon if Morrison didn't get the bleeding stopped. Across the cabin, Ross was working on Rucker. IV bags hanging, oxygen mask on. His color looked better, stable. Callahan lay unconscious nearby, face blackened with soot, blood matting his hair. But breathing. They'd all made it. Somehow, impossibly, they'd all made it. The helicopter climbed, leaving Zarabad behind. Emma closed her eyes. Thought about Silver Pine General, about Dr. Holt firing her, about walking away without a fight. Thought about how wrong they'd all been. Morrison finished bandaging her wound. "You're lucky. Another inch to the left and we'd be having a different conversation." "Story of my life," Emma murmured. The flight back took 2 hours. Emma drifted in and out. Morrison pumped her full of fluids and antibiotics, changed her bandages twice, kept talking to her, keeping her conscious. "Stay with me, Commander." "Not a commander anymore." "Yeah, you are. You just forgot for a while." They landed at the same airstrip they'd left from. Medical teams swarmed the helicopter. Gurneys appeared. Emma tried to stand, to help with Rucker, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. "Easy," Morrison said, guiding her to a gurney. "You're a patient now. Act like one." They wheeled her toward the medical tent. She kept her eyes on Rucker's gurney, watching as they transferred him to the surgical team. He was alive. That was what mattered. Inside the tent, doctors cut away her uniform, examined the wound, talked over her head in medical jargon she understood perfectly. Clean entry and exit. No perforation. Muscle damage, moderate blood loss. She needs surgery, but she'll recover. One of the doctors looked down at her. "You got lucky." "So I've been told." They prepped her for surgery. An IV in her arm. Something cold running through her veins. The world started to blur. The last thing she saw before the anesthesia took her was Colonel Brennan standing at the edge of the tent, a satellite phone to his ear, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Emma woke to white ceiling tiles and the smell of antiseptic. A military hospital. Somewhere in Germany, she guessed from the accent of the nurse checking her vitals. "Welcome back," the nurse said. "How do you feel?" "Like I got shot." "That's accurate." The nurse adjusted her IV. "You've been out for 6 hours. Surgery went well. No complications." Emma tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her side. "Easy," the nurse cautioned. "You've got stitches. Internal and external. You'll be sore for a while." "Rucker, Captain Rucker, where is he?" 2 rooms down. Stable. They got him into surgery within an hour of landing. He'll pull through." Emma let her head fall back against the pillow. Relief washed over her so strongly it almost hurt. "The others?" she asked. "Webb's in recovery. Shoulder surgery. Callahan has a concussion and some broken ribs, but he's awake. Morrison and Ross are fine. Mostly bruises and exhaustion." 7 operators went in. 7 came out. Impossible odds. And somehow, they'd beaten them. The nurse left. Emma stared at the ceiling, processing. Her side throbbed with each heartbeat. Her whole body felt like one giant bruise. But she was alive. They were all alive. The door opened. Colonel Brennan entered, still in his field uniform, face creased with exhaustion. "Commander," he said, "just Emma." "Not anymore." He pulled up a chair, sat heavily. "You made the news. Classified news, but still. Tier 1 extraction under impossible conditions. 5 wounded personnel evacuated from a hostile-controlled city. 0 KIA on our side. We got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. Brennan leaned forward. You saved Rucker's life. Twice. Once in that safe house, once in the plaza. The team leaders are calling it the most impressive combat medicine they've seen in a decade. Emma didn't know what to say to that. Brennan continued. I got a call 2 hours ago from Silver Pine General Hospital. Emma's stomach tightened. Seems the hospital administrator is very interested in speaking with you. Something about a wrongful termination. They've suspended Dr. Holt pending investigation. Apparently several nurses came forward after you left, complained about his behavior, the way he treats staff. I don't want his job, Emma said quietly. I know, but you might want this. Brennan pulled out a tablet, handed it to her. On the screen, an official letter, Department of Defense, reinstatement offer, full rank restoration, assignment to Joint Special Operations Medical Training Center as senior instructor. Emma stared at it. We need you, Brennan said simply. The next generation of combat medics needs someone who's been there, who knows what it takes, who can teach them not just the medicine, but the mindset. I left for a reason. I know. You were tired, burned out. You needed a break. Brennan's voice softened. But hiding in civilian hospitals, pretending to be someone you're not, that's not a break, that's running. Emma looked at the letter again, at the words she'd thought she'd never see. Commander, active duty, home. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need, the offer stands. Brennan stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth. I've seen a lot of medics in my career. None of them could have done what you did yesterday. None of them would have jumped out of that helicopter twice. He left. Emma lay in the silence, staring at the tablet. Thought about Crescent Falls, about Dr. Holt, about all the hospitals where she'd tried to disappear. Thought about Rucker, alive 2 rooms down because she hadn't disappeared when it mattered. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up. A text from an unknown number. Heard you saved Rucker's ass again. Some people never learn. Bishop Emma almost smiled. Almost. Another text appeared, this one from a number she recognized. Sarah Vance, the senior nurse from Silver Pine. I don't know who you really are, but I know what you did here. Daniel Cross is alive because of you. That resident they suspended? He's been cutting corners for years. You were the first person brave enough to call him on it. Just wanted you to know. We saw you, even when you thought you were invisible. Sarah. Emma read it twice, set the phone down. Thought about visibility, about being seen, about spending 2 years trying to be small when everything in her wanted to be large. The door opened again. She expected another nurse. Instead, Callahan limped in, head bandaged, moving like everything hurt. You look terrible, Emma said. You're one to talk. He eased into the chair Brennan had vacated. Came to say thanks. You pulled me out of that plaza. Could have left me. Never crossed my mind. Liar. But he said it with something that might have been respect. Morrison told me you were hit. Said you didn't even notice until we were airborne. Adrenaline's a hell of a drug. Callahan nodded slowly. Listen, I've worked with a lot of medics. Good ones. Great ones. But yesterday? What you did? He met her eyes. That was legend material. The team wants you to know that. I was just doing my job. No, your job was to patch us up and keep us breathing. You did that. But you also jumped out of a perfectly good helicopter. Twice. Under fire. To drag wounded operators to safety. He leaned forward. That's not training. That's character. Emma didn't know how to respond to that. Callahan stood, wincing. Anyway, if you ever need anything at all, you call me. That's a debt I won't forget. He limped out. Emma lay back, exhausted. Her side throbbed, her head hurt. But something else was happening, something she hadn't felt in 2 years. She felt whole. The next 3 days blurred together. Surgery recovery, physical therapy, debriefings. Emma answered questions about the mission, walked intelligence officers through every detail. They were particularly interested in how she'd identified Rucker's flail chest in the safe house under fire. Training, she said, an experience. But it was more than that. It was instinct. The kind you couldn't teach. You either had it
or you didn't. On the fourth day, Rucker was cleared for visitors. Emma walked slowly to his room, her side still sore but improving. Found him sitting up in bed, color back in his face, looking annoyed at being confined. "There she is," he said when she entered. "My guardian angel." "Don't start." "Too late. You've saved me twice now. Pretty sure that makes you responsible for me." Emma pulled up a chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got blown up and then dragged across a city, but alive, thanks to you. Thanks to the whole team." "Yeah, but you're the one who kept me breathing long enough for the team to matter." Rucker's expression turned serious. "I heard what happened. You got shot pulling Callahan out. Barely grazed. Liar. They said you needed surgery." Emma shrugged, regretted it immediately as pain shot through her side. "See," Rucker said, "you're as bad at taking care of yourself as I am at not getting shot. Clearly, we're both terrible at our jobs." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "What are you going to do now?" Rucker asked. "I heard Brennan offered you a teaching position. How did you—" "Word travels fast, especially when it involves Valkyrie coming out of retirement." Emma winced at the call sign. "I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes, get back to what I'm good at, but another part still wants to hide." She looked at him sharply. Rucker met her gaze. "I get it. After my first tour, I tried to go back to normal life. Got a job at a construction company. Lasted 3 months. Couldn't handle how small everything felt. How safe, how meaningless." "What did you do?" "Re-enlisted. Because I realized I wasn't running toward something. I was running from who I'd become. And you can't run from yourself. Trust me, I tried." Emma knew he was right. Had known it for 2 years but hadn't wanted to admit it. "The nurses who worked with you at Silver Pine," Rucker continued, "they saw something, even if they didn't know what it was. You can't hide that kind of competence, that kind of presence. You were always going to get caught eventually. I just wanted to help people without all the weight." "And you did. Daniel Cross is alive because you refused to stay quiet." "How many others did you save in those civilian hospitals? How many patients got better care because you were in the room, even if nobody knew why you were so good at what you do?" Emma hadn't thought about it that way. "But now," Rucker said, "you've got a choice. Keep hiding and helping one patient at a time, or come back and train the next generation of medics who'll go on to save thousands, maybe tens of thousands, over their careers." He made it sound so simple. Maybe it was. Emma stood carefully. "Get some rest. You need to heal. So do you." "Yeah, I'm working on it." She left his room, walked slowly back to her own. Her phone buzzed, another text. This time from a number with a Crescent Falls area code. "Dr. Holt has been terminated. Investigation found multiple violations. You were right about Daniel Cross. You were right about everything. The hospital board wants to extend a formal apology and discuss your return. Chief of Emergency Medicine position is open. We'd like to talk. Administrator Walsh, Silver Pine General." Emma read it 3 times. Chief of Emergency Medicine. The job she'd never asked for. The recognition she'd never wanted. Except maybe she had wanted it. She'd just been too afraid to admit it. Her phone buzzed again. Brennan. Decision day. What's it going to be? B? Emma stood at the window of her hospital room, looking out at the German countryside. Thought about Crescent Falls. About Silver Pine General. About Dr. Holt's face when he fired her. Thought about the look in Rucker's eyes when he woke up and realized he was still alive. Thought about Morrison pulling her into that helicopter. Thought about Callahan saying that's character. Thought about Sarah's text. "We saw you." She picked up her phone, typed a response to Brennan. "I'm in." "When do I start?" The response came immediately. "Already processed your reinstatement. Report to Fort Bragg in 2 weeks. Welcome back, Commander." Emma set the phone down, looked at her reflection in the window. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't see someone hiding. She saw herself. 3 days later, she was cleared for travel. The transport plane was waiting. She walked across the tarmac, side still sore but healing. Callahan and his team were there to see her off. "Don't be a stranger," Morrison said, shaking her hand. "You ever need us, you call," Webb added, his arm still in a sling.
Ross just nodded, but his eyes said enough. Callahan stepped forward last, extended his hand. Emma took it. "You made us look good out there," he said. "You made it easy." "Liar," he smiled. "Take care of yourself, Commander." "You too." She boarded the plane, found her seat, buckled in. As the engine spooled up and the aircraft began to taxi, Emma pulled out her phone. One last message to send. To Dr. Marcus Holt at Silverpine General Hospital. She stared at the blank message screen, thought about what she wanted to say, about vindication, about proving him wrong, about rubbing his face in his mistake. Instead, she deleted the message unsent. He'd figure it out on his own. The plane lifted off. Below, Germany fell away. Ahead, home waited. Emma closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she wasn't running towards something or away from something. She was just moving forward, and that made all the difference. The plane banked west. Behind her, in a hospital room in Zarabad, a construction worker named Daniel Cross sat up in bed, reading a newspaper. The headline talked about a raid, about hostages rescued, about impossible odds. It didn't mention Emma, but Cross knew. Somehow, he knew. In Crescent Falls, Sarah Vance stood in the Silverpine General ER, watching a new resident fumble through a trauma assessment. She thought about Emma, about quiet competence, about the courage it took to speak up. "Stop," Sarah said, stepping in. "You're missing something." The resident looked annoyed. "I've got this under control." "No, you don't. Look at the patient's breathing pattern." The resident looked, saw what Sarah saw. Paradoxical chest movement. "Flail chest," Sarah said quietly. "Just like the last time." The resident's face paled. Sarah smiled. "Let me show you how it's done." And in a government office in Washington, D.C., a file was updated. Status: active duty assignment, JSOMTC, senior instructor. Call sign: Valkyrie. Notes: recommended for commendation. Mission success rate 100%. Irreplaceable asset. The file closed. The system updated. And somewhere between Germany and North Carolina, Commander Emma Hayes slept dreamlessly on a transport plane. Her side healing, her future waiting, her past finally at peace. She'd spent 2 years being invisible. Now everyone would see exactly who she was. And she was ready. The plane touched down at Pope Army Airfield outside Fort Bragg just after midnight. Emma stepped onto the tarmac, breathing in North Carolina air that tasted like pine and coming rain. A staff car waited, engine running, headlights cutting through the darkness. The driver saluted. "Commander Hayes, welcome home." Home. The word sat strange in her mouth. They drove through the base in silence. Emma watched the familiar buildings slide past. Training facilities she'd run through as a young specialist. The medical center where she'd done her combat medic certification. The JSOC compound where she'd been read into programs that officially didn't exist. 2 years felt like 2 decades. The car stopped outside a small administrative building, lights still on despite the hour. "Colonel Brennan's waiting inside," the driver said. Emma grabbed her bag, climbed the steps. Inside, the building smelled like floor polish and old coffee. Brennan's office was at the end of the hall, door open. The man himself hunched over paperwork. He looked up when she entered. "You're early. Couldn't sleep on the plane." "Good, we've got work to do." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. We need to talk about what happens next." Emma sat, her side twinged with the movement. Brennan set down his pen. "The teaching position starts in 2 weeks. You'll be instructing advanced tactical medicine to special operations medics. Small classes, high washout rate. The ones who make it through your course will be the best we have." "What about the ones who don't?" "They go back to conventional units, still good medics, just not elite." Brennan leaned back. "But that's not what we need to discuss. There's been a development." Emma's stomach tightened. "What kind of development?" "The incident at Silverpine General. It's gotten attention, more than we anticipated." "From who?" "Military medical community, civilian hospitals, news media." Brennan pulled out a tablet, slid it across the desk. "This hit the wire services 6 hours ago." Emma read the headline on the screen. "Decorated combat medic wrongfully terminated from civilian hospital hours before military extraction." The article detailed her firing. Daniel Cross's near death, the helicopter landing, Dr. Holt's suspension. Someone had talked. Multiple someones. Who leaked this? Emma asked. Does it matter? It's out there now, and it's spreading. Brennan pulled the tablet back. I've had 3 calls from military reporters asking for comment, 2 from civilian networks. The hospital administrator at Silverpine has been fielding media requests all day. I didn't ask for this. No, but you earned it. Brennan's expression was unreadable. The question is what you do with it. Emma stared at him. I don't want to be famous. I just want to do my job. Too late. You're the story now. The quiet nurse who turned out to be a Tier 1 operator. The woman who saved lives in a war zone hours after being fired for saving a life at home. He leaned forward. People love that narrative. Underdog vindication. The system getting it wrong. Justice prevailing. It's not about justice. It's about medicine. For you, maybe. For everyone else, it's about something bigger. Brennan stood, walked to the window. There's a reason this is resonating. How many good people get pushed out of jobs because they speak up? How many competent professionals get silenced by incompetent superiors? Your story touches that nerve. Emma didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to be a symbol or a story. She just wanted to teach and treat patients and not think about Dr. Holt's face when he fired her. But Brennan wasn't done. Silverpine's board of directors is meeting tomorrow morning, emergency session. They're discussing the Holt situation and what it means for the hospital's liability. You're central to that discussion whether you like it or not. I'm not suing anyone. I know, but they don't know that. And even if you're not suing, others might. Nurses who witnessed Holt's behavior. Patients who received substandard care. The hospital's looking at significant exposure. Emma rubbed her temples. What do you want from me? I want you to be prepared, because this isn't going away. And when Silverpine implodes, and it will implode, people are going to look to you for answers. I don't have answers. Yes, you do. You were there. You saw what was wrong and you said something. That's more than most people manage. Brennan returned to his desk. Get some rest. Report here at 0800. We'll start your onboarding and figure out how to handle the media circus. Emma stood, grabbed her bag, paused at the door. Did Bishop know? She asked. When he called me. Did he know this would happen? Brennan's expression gave nothing away. Bishop knows a lot of things, but I don't think even he predicted this. Emma left, found her quarters in the visiting officer housing, small room, single bed, desk and chair, a window looking out on the parade ground. She unpacked her bag, changed into civilian clothes, sat on the bed, and opened her phone. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. Her voicemail was full. She scrolled through the messages, some from numbers she recognized. Sarah Vance, a few other nurses from Silverpine, several from reporters, one from Administrator Walsh asking her to call urgently, and one from a number she didn't recognize but knew immediately. Proud of you, even if you don't want to hear it. Dad. Emma stared at that message for a long time. Her father, retired Army colonel, the reason she'd joined in the first place. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since her discharge. He'd called it a mistake, said she was running from her potential. Maybe he'd been right. She didn't reply. Just set the phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow she'd start becoming Commander Hayes again. Tonight she was just Emma, exhausted and wounded and not entirely sure she'd made the right choice. But she was here. That had to count for something. Sleep came hard and broke easy. Emma woke at 05:30 out of habit, showered carefully around her stitches, dressed in the uniform she'd packed. Army combat uniform, name tape reading Hayes, medic patch on the sleeve, rank insignia she'd earned the hard way. She looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in 2 years, the reflection matched who she actually was. At 800, she reported to Brennan's office. Found him on the phone, expression grim. He waved her to a chair, finished his call. That was the Pentagon, he said without preamble. They want you to make a statement. About what? The Silverpine situation, your side of the story. Public Affairs thinks it'll help control the narrative. I don't want to control the narrative. I want it to go away. It's not going away. Brennan turned his monitor toward her. On screen, a news website with Emma's photo, her official military portrait from 5 years ago, next to a headline, a passline about wrongful termination and heroic rescue. Where did they get that photo? Emma asked. Public domain, it's on your military record, which means every news outlet in the country has access to it. Emma felt sick. Brennan continued. Dr. Holt is apparently not handling this well. He gave an interview this morning claiming you were insubordinate and reckless. Said he fired you for patient safety concerns. He's lying. We know. But he's got a platform and he's using it, which is why public affairs wants you to counter. With what? The truth? Exactly the truth. The fact that you identified a life-threatening condition he missed, that you intervened when he was making a fatal mistake, that Daniel Cross is alive because you refused to stay silent. Emma stood, paced to the window. If I make a statement, it becomes a fight. He'll escalate. It'll turn into a circus. It's already a circus. You're just choosing whether to be in the center ring or the audience. Emma hated that he was right. Hated that her quiet exit from civilian medicine had turned into a public spectacle. But most of all, she hated that Marcus Holt was out there lying about what happened, trying to rewrite history to save his own skin. What kind of statement? She asked finally. Brief, factual, unemotional. You describe what you observed, what you recommended, what happened afterward. You don't attack Holt personally. You just state facts and let people draw their own conclusions. When? This afternoon, 1400 hours. Video conference with Public Affairs. They'll walk you through it. Emma nodded slowly. Fine. But I want to see what Holt said first. Brennan pulled up the interview. Local news segment from a Crescent Falls station. Dr. Marcus Holt in a suit, sitting in what looked like a lawyer's office. Nurse Reeves showed a pattern of insubordination, Holt was saying, voice smooth and confident. She repeatedly contradicted medical staff, performed procedures without authorization, created a hostile work environment. The incident with Mr. Cross was the final straw. She endangered his life with an unnecessary intervention. The interviewer pushed back, but hospital records show Mr. Cross had a pneumothorax that would have been fatal without decompression. Hospital records can be interpreted many ways. What matters is that Nurse Reeves violated protocol and put a patient at risk. I made the difficult but necessary decision to terminate her employment. Emma's hands clenched into fists. Brennan paused the video. He's trying to get ahead of it. Frame the narrative before you can. He's rewriting what happened. Yes, which is why your statement matters. You're not just defending yourself. You're defending every medical professional who's been silenced for speaking up. Emma looked at Holt's frozen face on the screen, remembered his expression when he fired her, the certainty, the condescension, the absolute conviction that he was right and she was wrong. I'll do the statement, she said, but I'm not playing his game. I'm stating facts, nothing more. That's all we're asking. The rest of the morning was orientation. Emma met with the JSOMTC staff, toured the training facilities, reviewed curriculum. The work was familiar, grounding. This was medicine stripped of ego and politics, just skills and knowledge and the discipline to apply them under pressure. At 13:30, she returned to Brennan's office. A public affairs officer was waiting, Captain Andrea Mills, sharp-eyed and professional. Commander Hayes, Mills said, extending a hand. I'll be coordinating your statement. First, I want to be clear. This is voluntary. You don't have to say anything publicly. But you think I should. I think silence looks like guilt, and I think Dr. Holt is counting on you staying quiet. Emma sat down. What do you need from me? Mills opened a laptop. Just your account. What happened that night? Stick to observable facts. Avoid characterizing Holt's motives or competence. Let the facts speak for themselves. They spent 30 minutes drafting the statement. Emma described arriving at work, the trauma cases, Daniel Cross's presentation, her assessment of flail chest and pneumothorax, Holt's dismissal of her concerns, cross-coding, her intervention, the successful decompression. Did you consider not intervening? Mills asked. No, he was dying. I had the skills to save him. That's not a choice. Mills typed that in verbatim. Good. That's the core of your statement. You saw a patient in crisis? You had the training to help. You acted. Everything else is noise. At 1400, they connected to the public affairs video conference. Emma sat in front of a camera, uncomfortable and wishing she was anywhere else. The public affairs director appeared on screen. Commander Hayes, thank you for making time. We're going to keep this simple. You'll read your statement directly to camera. We'll release it to news outlets with your permission. No questions, no follow-up. Just the facts. Understood? Yes, sir. Whenever you're ready. Emma looked at the camera, thought about Daniel Cross, about Sarah Vance, about every nurse who'd ever been ignored or dismissed or pushed out for doing the right thing. She began reading. On the night of November 3rd, I was working as a trauma nurse at Silver Pine General Hospital in Crescent Falls, Oregon. A patient arrived with injuries from a motor vehicle accident. Based on my assessment, diminished breath sounds, paradoxical chest movement, and declining oxygen saturation, I believed he had a flail chest with possible tension pneumothorax. I communicated this to the attending physician and recommended against moving the patient until we could rule out the pneumothorax. My recommendation was dismissed. The patient subsequently coded. I performed a needle decompression, which relieved the tension pneumothorax and stabilized the patient. He survived. I was terminated immediately afterward for performing the procedure without physician authorization. She paused, looked directly at the camera. I'm a combat medic with 8 years of experience in tactical medicine. I've treated hundreds of trauma patients under conditions far worse than a civilian ER. I knew what I was looking at. I knew what needed to be done. And I knew that if I didn't act, Daniel Cross would die. So I acted. I would make the same decision again. She stopped. The public affairs director nodded. Perfect. That's exactly what we needed. Thank you, Commander. The video conference ended. Emma sat back, feeling drained. Mills closed her laptop. That was good. Strong, clear, factual. It'll play well. I don't care how it plays. I care that it's true. Truth and optics aren't mutually exclusive. Mills stood. The statement will go out within the hour. Be prepared for media follow-up. Don't engage. Direct all inquiries to public affairs. Emma nodded. Mills left. Brennan, who'd been watching from the corner, stepped forward. How do you feel? He asked. Like I just painted a target on my back. You didn't paint it. Holt did when he lied on camera. You just made sure people could see the whole picture. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Vance saw Holt's interview. That man is unbelievable. Please tell me you're fighting back. Emma typed a reply. Statement going public in an hour. Stay tuned. Sarah's response came immediately. About damn time. The statement hit the news cycle at 15:30. Within an hour, it had been picked up by major networks. By evening, it was trending on social media. The narrative shifted hard and fast. Combat. Medic fired for saving patient speaks out decorated veteran describes impossible choice in ER. Doctor who fired military medic faces credibility crisis. Emma watched it unfold from the safety of her quarters, phone buzzing constantly, texts and calls flooding in. She ignored most of them, but one call she answered. Administrator Walsh from Silver Pine General. Commander Hayes, Walsh said, and Emma could hear the stress in her voice. Thank you for taking my call. I want to apologize personally and on behalf of the hospital. What happened to you was unconscionable. I appreciate that. I also want you to know that we've completed our investigation into Dr. Holt. We found multiple instances of similar behavior, dismissing staff concerns, overriding safety protocols, creating a culture of fear in the ER. Walsh paused. He's been formally terminated. His medical license is under review by the state board, and we're implementing new policies to protect staff who raise safety concerns. Emma didn't feel the satisfaction she'd expected, just a tired sort of relief. What about the other nurses, she asked, the ones who witnessed his behavior but were afraid to speak up? We're interviewing all of them. Anyone who experienced retaliation or harassment will be compensated. We're also bringing in an outside consultant to review our entire ER operations. Good. Commander, the board would still like to discuss your return. The chief of emergency medicine position. I'm not coming back, Emma said quietly. I appreciate the offer, but I'm where I belong now. Walsh was silent for a moment. I understand, but if you ever change your mind, the door is open. They ended the call. Emma set her phone down, looked out the window. The parade ground was empty, lit by streetlights. Peaceful. Her phone buzzed again. This time a call from a number with a Washington, D.C. area code. She answered. Hayes? Commander Hayes, this is Diane Porter from the Senate Armed Services Committee. I apologize for the late call, but I wanted to reach you directly. Emma sat up straighter. How can I help you, ma'am? I've been following your situation with great interest. What you experienced at Silver Pine General reflects a broader problem in healthcare. Competent professionals being silenced or pushed out for raising legitimate concerns. The committee is planning hearings on patient safety and medical accountability. I'd like you to testify. Emma's mind went blank. Testify? About what? About your experience, about the barriers you faced, about what needs to change systemically to protect both patients and medical professionals. Porter's voice was firm, professional. Your story has resonance, Commander, and the committee believes it could drive meaningful reform. I'm not interested in being political. This isn't political, it's practical. We need to understand why qualified people leave healthcare, why safety concerns get ignored, why institutions protect bad actors instead of good staff. You have firsthand knowledge of all of that. Emma thought about Sarah Vance, about the other nurses at Silver Pine who'd stayed silent because they couldn't afford to lose their jobs, about Daniel Cross, who would have died if she hadn't spoken up. When would this be? She asked. Tentatively scheduled for January. We'd coordinate with your chain of command to ensure it doesn't conflict with your duties, and you'd have full preparation support. Emma looked at her reflection in the window, saw a woman in uniform, a commander, someone who'd stopped hiding. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I ask. My office will be in touch with the details. Porter paused. For what it's worth, Commander, what you did took courage, both in that ER and afterward. We need more people willing to stand up. The call ended. Emma sat in the quiet of her quarters, processing. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a nobody nurse in a small Oregon hospital. Now she was fielding calls from Senate committees and watching her former employer implode on national news. The world had turned upside down. Her phone rang again. She almost didn't answer. But the caller ID showed Bishop. This is your fault, she said without preamble. Bishop laughed. How do you figure? You knew what would happen when you pulled me. You knew it would expose everything. I knew we needed you for the mission. Everything else was a bonus. A bonus? My life is a circus right now. Your life is exactly where it should be. You're back in uniform. You're doing what you're good at, and you've sparked a conversation that needed to happen. Bishop's voice turned serious. Marcus Holt isn't the only doctor who silences nurses. Silver Pine isn't the only hospital with toxic culture. You didn't ask to be the catalyst, but you are. Deal with it. You're an asshole. Frequently, but I'm a correct asshole. He paused. How's the side? Healing. Good. Because we might need you again. Different mission. Same skill set. Emma's stomach tightened. I'm teaching now, not operational. You're both. That's what makes you valuable. Bishop, think about it. That's all I'm asking. He hung up. Emma sat in the darkness, phone in her hand, mind racing. She'd wanted simple, wanted quiet, wanted to disappear into medicine and never be noticed again. Instead, she'd become visible in ways she'd never imagined. And the terrifying part was realizing she didn't want to hide anymore. The next morning, Emma reported to the JSOMTC facility at 0600. The first class of students was already assembled, 12 special operations medics, all veterans of multiple deployments, all watching her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. She stood in front of them, feeling the weight of their attention. I'm Commander Hayes, she began. For the next 8 weeks, I'm going to teach you advanced tactical medicine. Some of you have already heard stories about me. Forget them. They're not relevant. What's relevant is keeping your teammates alive under the worst conditions imaginable. That's what we're here for. She walked along the front row, making eye contact with each student. You've all been through basic combat medicine. You know how to stop bleeding, clear airways, treat shock. What I'm going to teach you is how to make impossible decisions, how to triage when everyone's critical, how to operate with limited supplies under fire, how to carry the weight of knowing you can't save everyone. The room was absolutely silent. This isn't a heroics course. Emma continued. Heroes get people killed. This is about discipline, knowledge, and accepting that sometimes your best isn't good enough. The goal is to make your best as good as humanly possible, then live with the outcomes. She stopped at the front of the room again. Any questions? One student raised his hand. Sergeant First Class, multiple deployment patches, eyes that had seen things. Ma'am, is it true you jumped out of an extraction helicopter twice? Emma looked at him, considered deflecting, considered saying it wasn't relevant. Instead, she said, yes, because 2 of my teammates were still on the ground and I wasn't leaving without them. I got shot doing it. Don't recommend it, but sometimes the mission requires accepting risk you can't mitigate. Next question. Another hand. How do you decide when to break protocol? You don't break protocol. You make a clinical judgment based on the situation in front of you. If your training says one thing but your patient assessment says another, you trust your assessment. But you'd better be right. Because if you're wrong, people die, and it's on you. The questions continued. Emma answered each one directly, pulling from experience, from mistakes, from the hundreds of patients she'd treated over the years. By the end of the session, she could see the shift in how they looked at her. Not curiosity anymore, recognition. These were her people. They understood what she understood. The weight, the stakes, the impossible choices. After class, the senior student approached. Master Sergeant named Hawkins, early 30s, quiet confidence. Ma'am, just wanted to say it's an honor. I read about what you did at Silver Pine and Zarabad. You're the kind of medic we aspire to be. Emma felt uncomfortable with the praise but accepted it. Do the work, Sergeant. That's all that matters. Yes, ma'am. The days blurred into routine, teaching, training, physical therapy for her healing wound. Emma threw herself into the work, grateful for the structure. The media frenzy continued in the background, but she ignored it. Let public affairs handle the requests and statements. What mattered was the classroom. The students, passing on knowledge that would save lives she'd never meet. 3 weeks into the course, Brennan called her to his office. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Emma's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Dr. Holt is suing. You, the Army and Silver Pine General, wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. He's claiming your statement ruined his reputation and career. Emma stared. He's suing me? After he lied on camera? His lawyer is arguing that your military statement carried governmental authority and therefore constituted defamation. It's bullshit, but it's expensive bullshit. The Army's JAG office will handle the defense, but you'll need to be deposed. When? Next month. They'll coordinate with your schedule. Brennan leaned back. Emma, this is going to get ugly. Holt's desperate. He's lost his job, his reputation's destroyed, and he's facing license suspension. This lawsuit is his last shot at salvaging something. He has no case. Legally, probably not. But lawsuits aren't about truth. They're about attrition. He's hoping you'll settle to make it go away. Emma felt anger rising, hot and sharp. I'm not settling. I told the truth. If he wants to litigate that, bring it on. Brennan smiled grimly. I was hoping you'd say that. JAG will be in touch. Emma left his office, fury simmering. She'd tried to walk away quietly, tried to let Silverpine handle Holt internally, but he'd forced this fight, made it public, made it personal. Fine. If Marcus Holt wanted a war, she'd give him one. That night, Emma received an email from Sarah Vance with an attachment. You need to see this. We're not staying quiet anymore. S. The attachment was a letter, signed by 17 nurses from Silver Pine General, addressed to the state medical board. Emma read it twice. The nurses detailed years of complaints about Holt, instances of him ignoring safety concerns, dismissing female staff, retaliating against anyone who questioned him, creating an environment where speaking up meant career suicide. They documented everything, dates, patients, witnesses, a pattern so clear it was damning. And at the bottom, a line that made Emma's throat tight. We stayed silent because we were afraid. But Emma Hayes showed us that silence has a cost. We won't be silent anymore. Emma forwarded the letter to JAG with a simple note, discovery material for the Holt lawsuit. Then she called Sarah. Did you organize this? Emma asked when Sarah answered. We all did.
Couldn't let you fight alone. Sarah's voice was firm. Holt thinks he can intimidate us with lawsuits? He picked the wrong group of nurses. He's going to come after you too. Let him try. We've got documentation, we've got witnesses, and we've got each other. Sarah paused. You taught us something, Emma. Sometimes you have to risk everything to do what's right. After the call, Emma sat with that thought. She hadn't meant to teach anyone anything, hadn't meant to be an example. She just tried to save a patient and ended up exposing a system that protected the wrong people. But maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The lawsuit discovery process was brutal. Depositions, document requests, hours of testimony rehashing the night Daniel Cross almost died. Holt's lawyers tried every angle, questioning her credibility, her motives, her adherence to protocol. JAG destroyed them systematically. They produced Emma's military record, her commendations, her training certifications. Expert witnesses testified to her competence. The nurse's letter became Exhibit A in demonstrating Holt's pattern of behavior. And Daniel Cross himself gave a video deposition from his home in Crescent Falls. Commander Hayes saved my life, he said simply. I don't understand all the medical details, but I know I was dying and she fixed it. That doctor who fired her, he was ready to let me die rather than listen to her. That tells me everything I need to know. 6 weeks into the litigation, Holt's lawyers quietly approached JAG about dismissal. The Army refused. We're countersuing, the JAG attorney told Emma. Abuse of process. Frivolous litigation. We're going to make an example of this case. Show that you can't weaponize lawsuits to silence truth-tellers. Emma should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. But the fight wasn't over yet. Because 3 days before the scheduled trial date, Emma received a package at her office. No return address. Postmarked from Crescent Falls. Inside, a thick manila envelope. And a note in handwriting she didn't recognize. You'll want to see this before trial. He's not who you think he is. A friend. Emma opened the envelope. Inside were medical records. Dozens of them. Patients from Silver Pine General spanning 5 years. All showing misdiagnoses. Delayed treatments. Complications that could have been prevented. All under Dr. Marcus Holt's care. Emma's hands shook as she read through them. Saw the pattern emerging. Holt wasn't just arrogant and dismissive. He was incompetent, and he'd been covering it up for years. She called JAG immediately. We need to amend our defense. I just received evidence that changes everything. The trial never happened. 2 days before the court date, with the new medical records entered into evidence and the state medical board opening its own investigation, Holt's attorneys filed for dismissal with prejudice. The lawsuit was dead, and so was Marcus Holt's medical career. The state board suspended his license pending investigation. Silver Pine General faced multiple malpractice claims from families of patients whose care Holt had mishandled. His name became synonymous with everything wrong in healthcare. Emma watched it unfold with something less than satisfaction. She'd wanted justice, not destruction, but Holt had built his own pyre. She'd just struck the match. The morning after the dismissal, Emma stood in front of her students at JSOMTC. They'd followed the case, knew what it meant. Today's lesson is about accountability, she began. In combat medicine, your mistakes have immediate consequences. Someone dies. Someone suffers. There's no hiding from that. But in civilian medicine, sometimes bad practitioners can hide for years, protected by institutions, by colleagues who don't want to make waves, by systems that prioritize reputation over patient safety. She walked along the front row. You're going to see things that are wrong. You're going to work with people who cut corners, who prioritize convenience over care, who silence anyone who questions them. When that happens, you have a choice. Stay quiet and complicit, or speak up and accept the consequences. She stopped, looked at each student. I chose to speak up. It cost me jobs, cost me peace, nearly cost me my career, but it saved lives. That's the math we live with. Your comfort versus their survival. Choose wisely. The room was silent. Then Hawkins spoke up. And if speaking up doesn't work? If the system protects them anyway? Emma met his eyes. Then you document everything. You build a case so airtight they can't ignore it. And when the moment comes, when they finally slip up in a way that's undeniable, you're ready with evidence they can't explain away. She smiled,
sharp and cold. Patience and preparation. That's how you win wars you're not supposed to fight. After class, Emma returned to her office and found an email waiting from Marcus Holt. She almost deleted it unread, but curiosity won. Commander Hayes, I'm not writing to apologize. We both know I don't mean it, and you wouldn't accept it anyway. But I want you to understand something. I spent 15 years building my career. 15 years of school and residency and establishing myself. You destroyed that in weeks. You were insubordinate. You undermined my authority. You made me look incompetent in front of my staff. Maybe you were right about Cross. Maybe he would have died. But you didn't just save him. You humiliated me. And everything that came after, the investigation, the lawsuit, the license suspension, all of that happened because you couldn't just accept that I was the doctor and you were the nurse. I hope you're satisfied. You won. I lost. But don't pretend this was about patient safety or justice or any noble cause. This was about ego, yours and mine. The only difference is I'm honest about it. MH. Emma read it twice. Then she hit reply. Dr. Holt, you're right about one thing. This was about ego, yours. You couldn't accept that a nurse might know something you didn't, that your judgment might be wrong, that your authority wasn't absolute. I didn't destroy your career. You did. Years of cutting corners and dismissing concerns and protecting your reputation instead of your patients. I just refused to be another person you silenced. Daniel Cross is alive. That's what I care about. That's what I'll always care about. If you can't understand that, then you never should have been a doctor in the first place. Don't contact me again. Hayes. She hit send before she could second-guess it. Then she deleted his email and blocked his address. That chapter was closed. Time to focus on the next one. That evening, Emma's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hayes. A voice she hadn't heard in 3 years spoke. Emma, it's your father. Emma's breath caught. How did you get this number? I called in a favor. Don't worry, it's secure. Colonel William Hayes, retired, but once a colonel, always a colonel, sounded older than she remembered. I saw what happened, the trial, Holt, all of it. I'm fine. I know you are. You always were. He paused. I called to say I was wrong. 3 years ago, when you left active duty, I said you were making a mistake, that you were running. Emma said nothing. But you weren't running. You were searching for a place that fit, a way to use your skills without the weight. Her father's voice grew quiet. I pushed you too hard, expected you to be like me, career military, all the way to retirement. I didn't understand that you needed something different. Dad, let me finish. You're a better medic than I ever was a soldier. Better because you care about the right things, not rank or glory or legacy or just keeping people alive. That's rare. Don't lose it. Emma felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been tight for years. Thank you, she whispered. Make me proud, Emma. You already have, but keep doing it. The call ended. Emma sat in the quiet of her quarters, tears on her face she didn't remember shedding. For the first time since this all began, she felt like everything might actually be okay. The next morning, she received official notification from the Senate Armed Services Committee. The hearing was scheduled for January 15th. Her testimony would focus on systemic barriers to patient safety and the retaliation faced by medical professionals who raise concerns. She'd be testifying alongside healthcare advocates, patient safety experts, and other medical professionals who'd experienced similar situations. Emma accepted, because this was bigger than her now, bigger than Holt, bigger than Silverpine. This was about changing a system that protected the wrong people and silenced the right ones. And if her story could help do that, then every hardship had been worth it. She called Brennan to confirm her participation. Good, he said. Use that platform. Make it count. I intend to. And Emma, after the hearing, we need to talk about your next assignment. I'm teaching. That is my assignment. Teaching is part of it, but Bishop wasn't wrong. We might need you operational again. Different kind of mission, more strategic. Are you interested? Emma thought about Zarabad, about Rucker, about pulling Callahan out of that plaza while rounds chewed up the ground around them. Thought about the rush, the clarity, the absolute certainty of purpose that came with saving lives under fire. "Maybe," she said. "Ask me after the hearing." Brennan laughed. "Fair enough." Emma hung up, looked out her window at the training grounds, saw her students running drills, saw the next generation of combat medics learning to carry the weight. She'd taught them skills, techniques, protocols. But more importantly, she'd taught them something else. That speaking up was worth it. That standing your ground mattered. That sometimes the right choice was the hard choice and you made it anyway. Marcus Holt had tried to destroy her for that. Instead, he'd destroyed himself. And Emma Hayes, no longer hiding, no longer small, no longer invisible, stood in uniform and waited for whatever came next. The mission clock was always running. She was ready. January 15th arrived cold and clear. Emma stood outside the Russell Senate office building in Washington, D.C., watching her breath fog in the morning air. The building loomed above her, all marble columns and authority, the kind of place where decisions got made that changed lives. She'd worn her dress uniform, Class A's, ribbons arranged precisely, name tape crisp. If she was going to testify before the Senate, she'd do it as Commander Hayes, not as the nurse who'd been fired. Inside, a staffer led her through security, down corridors lined with portraits of former senators, into a waiting room outside the hearing chamber. Other witnesses sat in chairs, reviewing notes. Emma recognized a few names from the briefing materials. A patient safety advocate, a hospital administrator who'd implemented whistleblower protections, a doctor who'd lost his job for reporting surgical errors. They were all here for the same reason: to speak truth about a system that protected the wrong people. The door opened. Diane Porter, the senator who'd invited her, stepped in. "Commander Hayes, thank you for coming." Porter was mid-50s, gray hair pulled back, eyes sharp with intelligence. "We're running a few minutes behind. I wanted to brief you on what to expect." Emma stood. "I'm ready." "The committee will ask you to describe your experience at Silver Pine General. Keep it factual. Keep it concise. Some senators will be sympathetic. Others will question whether you overstepped your authority as a nurse. Don't get defensive. Just state what you observed and what you did." "What about Holt?" "He declined to testify. His lawyers advised against it given the ongoing medical board investigation." Porter's expression was grim. "But his absence speaks volumes. We have his deposition on record. The committee's already seen it." A staffer appeared at the door. "Senator, they're ready." Porter nodded. "Commander, you're up first. Make it count." Emma followed her into the hearing chamber. The room was massive, tiered seating rising in a semicircle. Senators sitting behind a long curved desk, cameras recording everything. The gallery was full. Press, observers, people who'd followed the story. Emma took her seat at the witness table, adjusted the microphone. The room quieted. Senator Porter called the hearing to order. "This committee is convened to examine systemic failures in healthcare accountability and patient safety. Our first witness is Commander Emma Hayes, United States Army, currently serving as senior instructor at the Joint Special Operations Medical Training Center. Commander Hayes, please raise your right hand." Emma stood, raised her hand, was sworn in. Porter continued. "Commander, you recently experienced termination from a civilian hospital after intervening to save a patient's life. Can you describe what happened?" Emma took a breath, looked at the senators, at the cameras, at the people in the gallery who'd come to hear her story. "I was working as a trauma nurse at Silver Pine General Hospital in Crescent Falls, Oregon. A patient arrived with injuries from a vehicle accident. Based on my clinical assessment, I identified signs of tension pneumothorax, a condition where air trapped in the chest cavity compresses the lungs and heart. It's fatal if not treated immediately." She spoke clearly, without notes, pulling from memory. "I communicated my concerns to the attending physician. He dismissed them. The patient coded. I performed a needle decompression to relieve the pressure. The patient survived. I was fired on the spot for performing the procedure without authorization." Senator Porter leaned forward. "What was your basis for making this diagnosis?" 8 years of tactical medicine experience, 3 combat deployments, hundreds of trauma cases. I knew what I was seeing. Diminished breath sounds on one side, paradoxical chest movement, declining oxygen saturation. Those are textbook signs. And the attending physician missed them? or chose to ignore them. I don't know which. What I know is the patient would have died if I hadn't acted. Another senator spoke up. Republican from Texas, skeptical expression. Commander, you're a nurse, not a doctor. Don't you think there's a reason we have hierarchies in medical settings? For patient safety? Emma met his eyes. Hierarchies exist to organize care, not to silence competent professionals. I identified a life-threatening condition. I had the training to treat it. The hierarchy in that moment was actively preventing me from saving a patient's life. So yes, I overrode it. But you violated protocol. I violated a protocol that prioritized authority over outcomes. That protocol would have killed Daniel Cross. Emma's voice was steady, firm. If following protocol means watching a patient die when I have the skills to save them, then I'll break protocol every time. The room erupted in murmurs. Porter gavelled for quiet. The Texas senator wasn't done. This sounds like Monday morning quarterbacking. You're judging the attending physician's decisions with the benefit of hindsight. No, sir. I'm judging them with the benefit of training and experience. I assessed that patient in real time under the same conditions the attending physician had. I reached a different conclusion because I looked at the evidence instead of assuming I knew better than everyone else in the room. Emma leaned forward slightly. That attending physician had a pattern of dismissing concerns from nursing staff, of retaliating against anyone who questioned his judgment. 17 nurses from that hospital have filed formal complaints documenting years of this behavior. I'm not an isolated case. I'm just the one who got national attention. Porter spoke again. Those complaints are part of the record. We've reviewed them. They paint a disturbing picture of institutional dysfunction. She looked at Emma. In your view, what needs to change? Emma considered the question carefully. This was the moment that mattered, not her story, the solution. First, hospitals need real whistleblower protections, not policies that look good on paper but get ignored when someone actually reports a problem. Legal protections, independent review, consequences for retaliation. She counted off on her fingers. Second, we need to change the culture that treats nurses as subordinate rather than collaborative. I had the same trauma training as many emergency physicians. In some cases, more. But my assessment was dismissed because of my title, not my competence. Third, medical licensing boards need to actually investigate complaints. The board in Oregon didn't look at Dr. Holt's record until after I was fired and the story went public. How many patients suffered because they didn't act sooner? The chamber was absolutely silent. None of this is complicated, Emma continued. It's about valuing patient safety over protecting egos. It's about listening when competent professionals raise concerns. It's about accountability. She sat back. That's what needs to change. The hearing continued for another hour. Other witnesses testified. Data was presented. Senators debated. But Emma's testimony anchored everything. She could feel it in the room. The shift from abstract policy discussion to human stakes. When Porter finally gavelled the hearing to a close, she caught Emma's eye and nodded. Message received. Outside, the press swarmed. Emma declined all interview requests, let public affairs handle the statements. She just wanted to get back to Fort Bragg and her students and the work that mattered. But before she could reach her car, someone called her name. She turned. Daniel Cross stood 20 feet away, looking nervous and out of place in a suit that didn't quite fit. His wife was with him, holding his hand. Emma walked over. Mr. Cross, what are you doing here? Had to come. Had to hear you tell them what happened. His voice was rough with emotion. I watched the whole thing, everything you said about that doctor, about the hospital. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to. You were focused on recovering. I'm alive because you fought for me, because you wouldn't back down. Cross's eyes were wet. My kids still have a father because you did your job even when it cost you everything. His wife stepped forward. We can never repay you, but we wanted you to know what you mean to us, what you gave us. Emma felt her throat tighten. You don't owe me anything. I just did what needed doing. That's what makes you different. Cross extended his hand. Thank you, Commander, for everything. Emma shook his hand, then his wife's. Watched them walk away, still holding hands, still together because she'd made one impossible decision in an ER 6 weeks ago. This was why she'd come back, why she'd testified, why she'd fought, not for recognition, for this, for knowing that speaking up had mattered. The flight back to North Carolina was quiet. Emma sat in her seat, replaying the hearing in her mind, wondering if it would actually change anything, or if it was just political theater. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sarah Vance. Watched the hearing. You were incredible. Every nurse in America is talking about it. You gave us a voice. Thank you. Another text came in. From Callahan, saw your testimony. That's the Commander Hayes I know. Well done. Then Morrison, senators don't know what hit them. Proud to serve with you. More messages flooded in. From students, from colleagues, from people she'd worked with years ago who'd followed her story. Emma read them all, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the arrogant kind, the quiet kind. The kind that came from knowing you'd stood for something that mattered and refused to back down. 2 weeks later, the Senate Armed Services Committee released its preliminary recommendations. Mandatory whistleblower protections for healthcare workers, federal funding tied to patient safety metrics, enhanced oversight of medical licensing boards. Senator Porter held a press conference. The testimony we heard, particularly from Commander Hayes, made clear that our current system fails both patients and providers. These recommendations are a first step toward meaningful reform. Emma watched the press conference from her office at Fort Bragg. Brennan stood in the doorway. You started something, he said. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's all it takes. He stepped inside, closed the door. Speaking of truth, we need to discuss your next assignment. Emma looked up. I'm teaching. That's my assignment. For now. But Bishop wasn't exaggerating. We have a situation developing. Different theater, high-value target. Embedded team needs a medic with your specific skill set. I'm not operational anymore. You jumped out of a helicopter twice during the Zarabat extraction. You're as operational as they come. Brennan's expression was serious. This is voluntary, but I want you to consider it. Emma thought about her students, about the classroom, about the life she was building here, stable and quiet and meaningful. Then thought about Rucker, about the operators who'd trusted her, about the rush of absolute clarity that came with saving lives under fire. What's the timeline? She asked. 3 months. Training phase starts next week. Deployment in April. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. After he left, Emma sat in silence, pulled up her email, found the most recent message from her students. They'd completed their first field exercise. All passed, all moving forward. She'd taught them well. They were ready. Maybe she was ready too, for the next mission, for whatever came after teaching. But first, she had one more thing to do. That evening, Emma drove to Crescent Falls. 3 hours north, winding through mountain roads, watching the sun set over the Cascades. She arrived after dark, parked outside Silver Pine General Hospital. The ER entrance looked exactly the same. Ambulance bay, automatic doors, the organized chaos visible through the windows. Emma sat in her car watching. She'd walked out of those doors 6 weeks ago thinking she'd never come back, never see this place again, never confront the part of herself that had failed here. Except she hadn't failed. She'd succeeded, and the hospital had failed her. She got out of the car, walked inside. The ER had been renovated. New paint, new signage. A display near the entrance showed the hospital's updated mission statement and patient safety commitments. The changes weren't subtle. A nurse Emma didn't recognize approached. Can I help you? I'm looking for Sarah Vance. She's in the break room, down that hall, second door on the right. Emma walked through the ER, noting changes. New protocols posted on the walls. A suggestion box for staff safety concerns. A plaque near the nurses' station listing contact information for the hospital's whistleblower hotline. Things she'd been asking for 6 months ago. Things that had been impossible then. Standard practice now. She found the break room. Sarah sat at a table, reviewing charts. Looked up when Emma entered. Emma? Sarah stood quickly, crossed the room, pulled her into a hug. I didn't know you were coming. Didn't know myself until this morning. Sarah stepped back, studied her. You look different. Good different. I feel different. They sat. Sarah poured coffee from a pot that looked hours old. How's the ER? Emma asked. Better? New attending started last week. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, former military, actually. She's tough, but fair. Listens to staff. Actually implements suggestions. Sarah smiled. It's like working in a different hospital. And the other nurses?
Most stayed, a few transferred, but the culture's changing. People speak up now. They know they won't get punished for it. Emma sipped the terrible coffee. That's good. It's because of you. You know that, right? What you did, standing up to Holt, refusing to back down, testifying before Congress, you changed this place. I just wanted to save a patient. You saved all of them. Every patient who comes through here now benefits from the new protocols, from the culture shift, from having staff who aren't afraid to raise concerns. But Sarah leaned forward. You were the catalyst, Emma, whether you wanted to be or not. They talked for another hour about the hospital, about the hearing, about Emma's students and her possible next deployment. When visiting hours ended and Sarah had to get back to work, they walked to the exit together. At the door, Sarah stopped. Are you coming back? To civilian medicine, I mean. After the Army. Emma thought about it, really thought about it for the first time. I don't know. Maybe, but not to hide, not to be small. If I come back, it'll be on my terms, as who I actually am. Sarah smiled. Good, because we need more people like you, people who won't stay quiet when something's wrong. They hugged goodbye. Emma walked to her car, drove back toward Fort Bragg through the darkness. She thought about Holt, about where he was now. She'd heard through the grapevine that his medical license had been permanently revoked, that he'd filed for bankruptcy, that he was working some administrative job in a different state, far from patients, far from the authority he'd wielded so carelessly. Emma didn't feel satisfaction at his downfall, just a sort of distant relief. One less incompetent person in a position to hurt others. Justice wasn't revenge. It was consequences. And Holt had finally faced his. The next morning, Emma made her decision about the deployment. She walked into Brennan's office at 700. I'm in. For the mission, whatever it is. Brennan looked up from his paperwork. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's the right answer. He slid a folder across the desk. Initial briefing. Read it, memorize it, burn it. Emma took the folder, started reading. High-value intelligence asset. Compromised network. Extraction required. Timeline, 8 weeks in country, maybe less if things went wrong. The kind of mission where medics earned their pay. When do I brief the team, she asked. 1,400 hours. You'll meet them today. 5 operators. All experienced, all aware of your reputation. Great. No pressure. Brennan almost smiled. You'll be fine. Just do what you do. At 1400, Emma entered the briefing room. 5 operators stood when she entered. She recognized the type immediately. Quiet professionals, hard eyes, bodies that moved like weapons. The team leader stepped forward. Commander Hayes, Captain Derek Stone, this is my team. Emma shook his hand, then went around the room. Names and faces. Morrison was there. She recognized him from Zarabad. The others were new, but cut from the same cloth. Glad to have you, ma'am, Morrison said. Heard you're teaching now, making little medics. Trying to. They're stubborn. Wonder where they get that from. The team laughed. Emma felt the tension ease. These were her people. Different faces than before, but the same breed. Operators who understood what she understood. The stakes, the weight, the absolute commitment required. Stone outlined the mission. Infiltration, surveillance, extraction. Emma's role was medical support and intelligence liaison. If things went loud, she'd be treating casualties under fire. If things went quiet, she'd be invisible. Questions? Stone asked when he finished. Emma raised her hand. What's the expected hostile count? Anywhere from 20 to 50, depending on the day. They rotate patrols. We'll time our movement to minimize contact. And if we can't minimize contact, then we fight through. Standard doctrine. You've done this before. Emma nodded. Had done this before. Would do it again. Because this was who she was now. Not the nurse who'd hidden in small hospitals. The commander who walked into danger and brought people out. Training started the next week. Emma fell back into the rhythm immediately. Range time, tactical movement, medical drills under stress. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. She was good at this. Always had been. The knowledge sat comfortably now instead of like a weight. Between training sessions, she continued teaching her regular course.
The students noticed the change in her, noticed she was sharper, faster, more demanding. "Ma'am, you seem different," Hawkins said after a particularly brutal field exercise. "How so?" "More focused, like you're preparing for something." Emma considered deflecting, considered keeping it classified. Instead, she said, "I'm deploying. 8-week mission. You'll have a substitute instructor while I'm gone." The class went silent. "Will you come back?" someone asked. "That's the plan." "What if something happens?" Emma looked at the student who'd asked. Young sergeant, earnest eyes, scared of losing a teacher who finally made sense. "If something happens, you keep training. You keep learning. You keep getting better. Because lives depend on you being the best you can be." "My life. Your teammates' lives. People you've never met who'll bleed out if you're not good enough." She paused. "So you'd better be good enough." Silence. Then Hawkins spoke up. "We won't let you down, ma'am." "I know you won't. That's why I can leave." The weeks blurred past. Training intensified. Emma's wound from Zarabad healed completely. Her body returned to combat readiness. Her mind sharpened. 2 days before deployment, her father called. "Heard you're going back out," he said without preamble. "Where did you hear that?" "I still have friends in the community. They talk." He paused. "Are you ready?" Emma thought about the question, really considered it. "Yeah, I think I am." "Good, because I need to tell you something I should have said 3 years ago." Her father's voice was rough. "You're a better operator than I ever was. Better medic, better leader, better at making the hard calls. I was wrong to push you away from your path, wrong to want you to follow mine." Emma's throat tightened. "Dad, let me finish. When you left active duty, I thought you were giving up, thought you were quitting, but you weren't. You were searching for something I never understood, a way to use your skills without losing yourself." He exhaled. "You found it, and then you came back on your terms. That takes strength I'm not sure I have." "You're wrong. You have plenty of strength. Different kind. The kind that charges hills and follows orders and doesn't ask questions. You have the kind that questions everything and fights for what's right, even when it's hard. That's rarer. That's more valuable." Emma closed her eyes. "Thank you. Come home safe, and after this mission, call me. We should talk, really talk, not as soldiers, as family." "I'd like that." The call ended. Emma sat in the quiet of her quarters, processing. Her relationship with her father had been broken for years. Maybe it wasn't completely fixed, but it was healing. That was enough. Deployment day arrived clear and cold. Emma stood on the tarmac at Pope Airfield, gear packed, medical kit ready. The team gathered around the transport aircraft. Stone did final checks. Morrison cracked jokes to cut the tension. Brennan appeared, walking across the tarmac. "Commander, good hunting." "Thank you, sir." "Bishop wanted me to give you something." Brennan handed her a small package. "Said to open it when you're in country." Emma pocketed the package. "Tell him I said he's still an asshole. He'll take that as a compliment." The team boarded. Emma found her seat, buckled in. The engines spooled up. The aircraft taxied, lifted, climbed into the gray North Carolina sky. She looked out the window, watching Fort Bragg fall away below. Thought about how far she'd come. From hiding in civilian hospitals to testifying before Congress. From the nurse everyone ignored to the commander everyone watched. She'd been invisible for so long. Had thought that was safer, easier, better. But visibility came with responsibility, with accountability, with the chance to actually change things instead of just surviving them. Marcus Holt had tried to destroy her for speaking up. Instead, he'd destroyed himself. And Emma had become exactly who she was always meant to be. The aircraft banked east toward the mission, toward danger, toward whatever waited in the darkness. Emma wasn't afraid. She opened Bishop's package. Inside, a simple note. "You were never invisible. We always saw you. We were just waiting for you to see yourself." Emma smiled, tucked the note away. Outside, the world stretched vast and waiting. Somewhere ahead, operators needed a medic. Somewhere ahead, lives hung in the balance. And Emma Hayes, commander, medic, instructor, survivor, was ready, because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Silence had a cost. Speaking up had consequences. But the cost of silence was always higher than the consequences of truth. She'd paid the price for speaking, lost jobs, lost peace, nearly lost her life, but she'd gained something infinitely more valuable: herself. The aircraft flew on through the darkness. Emma closed her eyes, breathing steady, mind clear. Whatever came next, she'd face it the same way she'd faced everything else: with skill, with courage, with the absolute certainty that some things were worth fighting for, and she'd keep fighting until the mission was done. Because that's what commanders did. That's what legends did. That's what Emma Hayes did. And she was just getting started. The end. For every person who's been told to stay quiet, for every professional who's been dismissed, for every voice that's been silenced. Speak anyway, stand anyway, fight anyway. The world needs people who refuse to be invisible. Be one of them.